Hello everyone and welcome back to Xbox app development. In this session we're actually going to be talking about XAML apps. And hopefully we have a lot of XAML developers out there. We know we have a lot of apps in the store already today. And what we're going to really talk about is how do you take that existing XAML app that you have and make it run on Xbox. And not just run on Xbox, but how do you make it great on an Xbox? So let's just jump right into it. The main reason that you might want to do that is now with the Universal Windows platform, you can actually reach every single device that Microsoft has. You can reach our phone, you can reach our tablet, you can reach a desktop, and now you can reach Xbox. So you can take that one single app and make it everywhere. This is truly a what you see is what you get type of platform with our XAML stack. When you say, hey, I want that to be red, I want that to be all the way to the left, I want that to be all the way to the top, we conform to whatever it is that you say. Now we do some things to help you here, and we're going to cover those when we go through all the Xbox. But you can easily take that same device without a lot of work and say, hey, how can I actually take advantage of the hardware that I'm running on? Very similar to how you can make an Xbox app on your desktop go full screen when you want to take advantage of a touch mode, like the Surface when the keyboard gets disconnected. We can do the same thing on the Xbox. We can actually just make it work fantastic on that device. So let's just jump right into the demo machine here. And the first thing that I actually want to show you is this is actually just a XAML app. There's nothing special here. I'm going to run it here locally. I have a local Xbox controller hooked up to it. And this is new. If you're targeting the Anniversary Edition SDK, you can actually just use your controller plugged in. I'm going to just hit maximize here. So this looks just like any other normal Windows app. This is a UWP app, and you can see it's a great app because I can resize it. It takes advantage of whatever screen it's on. It'll go up and down. It has a nice hamburger menu here that you can collapse. This is just, we can click on each one of these presidents. This is a president's app. If you watched one of the talks at Build, we use the same app. And we're going to be open sourcing this version as well as soon as this talk is over. But this is just a great XAML app, right? There's nothing special here. Like I did not build this for the Xbox. This app was built to be a UWP app. So let's switch back over to our slides. And the biggest reason why you might want to start thinking about how do I make this a better experience is because UWP on the Xbox is fundamentally different. When I'm working with an Xbox, I'm probably not sitting as close as I am to like this Surface Book here. This is what we call the 2-foot view. But when you're working with an Xbox, you're probably sitting 10 feet away. You may have more than one person with you. You may have a friend sitting with you. You may be playing with your friends like I do a lot of times with my kids. We may have 3 or 4 people playing at the same time on a cooperative game type of scenario. But with apps, you have all those same controls. It's just up to you to choose what do you want that experience to look like. When you're sitting really, really close to your PC at a 2-foot view, as we call it, the controls are actually, it's easier to click on them. But when you're working with a controller, you need to think about that. So this is actually a screenshot of that same app that we just saw, the President's app. On the left side is it running on a desktop, or a 2-in-1 in this case. And then on the right side is what it might look like on the Xbox. And it's fundamentally the same app, but I'm going to take some time here to say, hey, you know what? The Xbox always has a dark theme, for example. So I might want to change that white background to a black background. You can notice on the right-hand side there's a little focus rectangle around George Washington. Those are important things when you're working with an Xbox, is you want people to be able to know what it is that they currently have selected. So now let's take this same UWP app and switch over to the demo machine. And now all I'm going to do is change this to remote machine. Not going to change a single line of code yet. We're just going to hit remote machine, and it's going to deploy over to the Xbox. So while this is deploying, I believe Nikolai actually just showed you, if you didn't watch the previous session, we do have a session on how to set up your Xbox to be a developer machine so you can deploy to it. We also do have this really nice dev mode companion app that you can now use. You can see that it's actually deploying. But I'm not going to use that right now. I'm actually going to let's switch over to the Xbox. And you can see, here is the app running on the Xbox. And the first thing you'll notice is, hey, why does that cursor look like that? It's like, that's not what I meant. It's trying to simulate a mouse for me. And this is the default behavior for any UWP app that you bring over to Xbox, is we're going to put it in this mode, and I'm going to show you how to change that to be more of the captured highlight that we expect from most apps. You can also see, hey, look, right over here, there's this big area here that wasn't there on the PC. This is also down, and these are what we call safe mode. And I actually have, we're going to talk about that as well. How do you get rid of safe mode on there? But this does work just like the desktop app did. You know, I can move the mouse to that point. And if you've ever used the Edge browser on your Xbox, this is the same thing. The A selects, the B goes back. So that really is it. Let's go ahead and switch back to slides. So presenting on the TV gives you a different set of challenges. When you look at the UI that you have, like here on my Surface Book, I'm sitting 2 feet away from it, and that button that's on the left there needs to be much, much larger so that I can see it on my TV. Even though the TV is physically larger than my Surface, I'm actually sitting much further away from it. So by default, we automatically up all of your UX 200%. And this makes sense because we're actually changing the effective pixels down to 960 by 540. Now, the first thing I hear people saying is, what? Wait a minute. My TV screen is 1080, so why did you just change my resolution? So we changed the resolution to effective pixels. This is how UWP works, and we're going to scale all that up for you. So we do have a design session later on today. You'll definitely want to check out where we talk about effective pixels, what they mean, why we came up with that concept. But this is kind of a really quick introduction to the idea. If you look at that top row, you see the phone, a laptop, and a large screen PC. And you'll see that that circle, that blue circle, is different on each one. You'll see that they're all the circle is the same size, but because the screen resolution on those is different, what you see actually ends up looking different. On the Xbox, we don't want that. We want, no matter what size TV you're hooked up to, you can be hooked up to a TV monitor, like your computer monitor, just running it as a TV. You could be hooked up to a LCD or to a plasma, a really large projection, doesn't really matter. We want that circle to take proportionally the same amount of space. And another thing you need to think about, and we covered this a little more in the design session as well, but you need to think about what is a TV safe area. So not all TVs can project all the way out to the edges or all the way to the top and bottom. So we actually say, use this 960 by 540. We're going to letterbox you. We're going to actually step your app in a little bit because we don't know where your controls are. You may have put a control in that very, very up left corner. Like look at this app. It has a hamburger menu in the very upper left-hand corner. If I was on a TV that needed those safe screens on the side, you would not be able to reach that. And that would be a very bad user experience. So by default, we step you in. Now you as the app developer can say, no, I really do want to take over this entire screen. I know what I'm doing. I didn't put any controls there, and it's a much better experience. So that light blue area is not always visible. We do call that TV safe, and you'll hear that term over and over and over today, I'm sure. But UWP will letterbox your app by default. But you should always try to extend out. Just don't put anything important there. Don't put any buttons there. Don't put anything you absolutely positively need in that spot. So the letterboxing, again, just to kind of really harp in on this so you understand, we bring everything in. We bring those margins in on the left and right. We bring the margins in on the top and bottom. But you really don't want that. So we're going to actually extend that out, the left and right, the top and bottom, so that it looks more optimal. And here's kind of a side-by-side of what that might look like if I were on the left side of the TV without the need. So it can actually see all the blue area that we previously showed. But let's say the TV on the right can't. It can only display the TV safe area. And so the UI still looks good, even though we're actually cropping a little bit of the content. And that's OK. So let's do a quick demo of that. Let's switch back to the demo machine. This source code is going to be available on GitHub later on today. And I want to show you right here under, you may have not used this before, but if you go under View and you come down to Task List, I've actually created a bunch of to-dos here for you. So you can actually follow along with this later. You can actually go through the app, and I put them all in order, 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. We already did the 1.0s. The 2.0 was actually a numbering error on my part. But you can just basically click on them, and you can see the lines of code, and I just have them commented out so you don't have to sit here and watch me actually type them. But the first thing that I want to point out here is that we have this requires pointer mode when requested. Now that was the mouse-like cursor using the left stick on my controller. Now, you may have a need for that. You may have, let's say, an area where you want the user to try to sign their name, or an area where you want them to really have that super fine-grained control. But in this app, we really don't want that. We really want the XY focus, which is what we're doing here. We're basically saying, hey, always give me this XY focus. I don't really care about the other modes. Let me just pin that real quick. The other thing that we actually do need to check here is, did the user actually use the gamepad? So all of the built-in controls will take advantage of using A and B to drill in and drill out. They'll take advantage of selection, but you may want to do something special. And in this case, what I'm basically saying is, if the user picked gamepad view, I actually want to take this toggle pane and move it in and out. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get it on the device. But this is just, it looks like a virtual key. It's just this key doesn't exist on your keyboard, obviously. This only exists on the Xbox controller. Now, this is actually something that you don't need to do now with Visual Studio Update 3. But I'm just going to, I left it in here just because it is a super handy diagnostic tool for you. It basically says, hey, every time a new control gets focused, whenever the user hits tab on the keyboard or whenever they use the left stick on their controller, we want to basically put that out in the debug window. So if I were going to put this in a production app, I'd probably put this under if def debug, because I don't ever want this to be left in production code. But it can be really, really handy when I'm trying to debug, hey, who has focus now? What happened to my focus? There's a better way to do it now, and I'm going to show you that when we actually go in and debug this. But one thing that I need to do here, and I could actually do this twice, I'll just do it once, is that, hey, when I open and close that split view on the left-hand side where the hamburger menu was and the list of everything that's there, those had some controls at the very, very bottom to take me to a full screen mode, to take me to like a TV mode. If I do not collapse those, if I don't hide those from the visual tree, they will be tab stops. So the user hitting tab on their keyboard or using their stick will actually be able to show that. And actually, you know, we'll actually just go ahead and show that. So we'll switch back to the remote machine. And we're deploying again. Let's switch to the Xbox, please. So now the app is coming up. And the first thing you're going to notice is that now we actually have a selection. So now you can see George Washington is selected. And now as I move left and right on my the joystick pad, it actually goes up and down through all of these things. So this is like tabbing on the keyboard. If I scroll up and down. I can hit A to select things. I can hit B to go back. When I select an individual president, you can see the previous and next buttons. That's now just a left and right on my left keypad or joypad. It's no longer having to move the little mouse around to get right on top of it. So this is actually just a much better experience. So the one thing that could happen here, though, is see that red area? I actually mapped the left X here, the X button, to turn on and off that color save mode. So you can see that I still have color safe enabled here. We're not taking advantage of the full screen yet, so we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to just fix that next. Let's go back to the PC. Let's go back to the task list here. And so now the first thing that I want to do is I actually want, hey, whenever that left side actually flies in and out, I want to hide these so that they don't become tab stops. And if you don't know, the keyboard shortcut for uncommenting a bunch of code is Control-K-U. You can also do Control-K-C in order to comment out that code. And I actually renamed a variable after I checked the code in, so I got to fix that for you guys. And then when it actually does expand again, we want to make sure that we make them visible again so the user can actually select them. And so now, let's go ahead and deploy again. We're still not taking advantage of the whole screen yet, but now we are actually going to be able to collapse and expand that side panel using the button. And so let's switch back to the Xbox. And so now, over here on the left-hand side, when I tab that, this down here actually, see, these are now tab stops. Now I can actually land on them. But when I collapse it, they will no longer be tab stops. If I tab, it'll actually take me directly into the UI. So let's switch back to slides. So the gamepad and the remote, I've already mentioned them a couple times. hopefully most of you guys have actually used the gamepad before. If you haven't, it's a fantastic controller. You can actually use it on your PC. You don't even have to have an Xbox in order to test a lot of this. But if you have one, you'll actually know that there's a lot of buttons here that don't exist on keyboards. And if you have the media remote, which is the one here on the right, it actually has some buttons that don't exist anywhere except on the media remote. So that's also pretty unique. If you look at all of our other input mechanisms like touch or using your mouse, you have way more points. Like I could click all over that entire screen, every single pixel, whenever I'm using a mouse. But if I'm using the Xbox controller, I'm going to highlight those individual controls. So I cannot click just anywhere. You need to think about that from a user experience perspective. What are your users actually going to be clicking on? Sometimes you actually need to simplify things as the user comes through it. And what we're going to actually look at here is this is actually kind of an example of what the gamepad and the remote interaction look like. So on the left-hand side is XY focus, which we just turned on in the code. On the right-hand side is what it looked like before. So if I tap right, I go to the right arrow. If I tap down, I go to the down arrow. If I'm using the stick, I actually have much finer control. I can actually do much more stuff. And you might want to do that if you, let's say, embed a web view within your app and you want the user to be able to click on anything within that because you don't control the content of that. That might still be a perfectly reasonable thing for you to do. But most of the time, we actually want you to use the one on the left because it's actually recommended for most UI in the Xbox, and users get it, like that big, nice focus rectangle. Hey, I know this is where I'm currently, if I hit A, this is what's going to be selected. And that's important to users that they need to know. But sometimes you do need that one there on the right. So to configure that, it's actually really simple. In the application requires pointer, XY focus, you just change that to be when requested rather than auto. Auto will actually leave it so that it will actually only use it whenever the individual control. But we can do it at the entire application level and say, hey, I want the when requested, I want XY focus, except on controls where specifically requested. So I can still embed an edge, a web view browser there, and I can say, hey, on this one, now I want the user to be able to do it. But on all the other ones, I don't. So on a specific control, let's say I had a web view control there, I could then say, hey, you know what? Dot requires pointer equals when engaged. You could change that yourself. So again, here are the gamepad and remote inputs. There's lots of buttons here that don't exist anywhere else. But these are the primary ones that the user is going to use. That left stick and the circle on the media remote, that acts kind of like your tab and your left right on the keyboard. You can use the plus pad down here on the lower left. You know, these are things that I think most users are pretty familiar with. It just moves the focus around. But the A button is like clicking. It's like a left mouse button down event. And most users will say, hey, I already know that from my Xbox games. Whenever I want to choose something, I hit A. Hey, that just works. I don't have to think about it. But all the built-in controls already know how to do this for you. Again, as long as you're targeting the Anniversary Edition, we take care of all that for you, all the built-in controls. If you're building your own control, you actually need to listen for the space key. Go back. Again, this is something that is built into the platform. We take advantage of the go back. If there's a hardware button, if there's a software button, anything that says go back in the system, as long as you're listening for that, you're going to get that behavior if you're building a third-party control. Now, this is the one that throws people a little bit because you don't use this in games all that often. But it's on the right-hand side. It looks like a hamburger menu, like the one that we just had. But the best explanation that I heard was think of it as right-click. It's on the right side of the controller. Think of that as a right-click. That's when I want to bring something up, maybe a fly-out menu. I want to share something. I want to do something. That's what that one is for. The one on the left, that's for, let's say you have the Xbox, the media app open, and it actually has a schedule that you can see of what's coming up next, those types of things. That is what that is for, is controlling windowing whenever I want to change windows. So combined, on the left side and the right side, that's what they look like together. You can map them. The left D-stick pad, again, this is the move focus. And in the application, we want to change the requires pointer equal to when requested. This gives us that focus that we really like. The A, which is a select, which is also like a click. This is just a click event. If you're building a custom control, you need to make sure you respond to the spacebar event, because that's what that comes through as. B is back, which is, again, just moving back. And you respond to the system navigation manager.back requested event. This is a standard event that's been there. It's in Windows Phone. It's already in the desktop. But this is something you need to do if you're building custom control, or if you have a custom UI experience that you want. the menu, what looks like the little hamburger menu there, again, this is like the right click. This is a context menu. If you run a desktop, this might bring up a menu, might bring up a pop-up, something like that. But you want to make sure that you can also handle that within your app. And on the left-hand side, you may want to show some panes, switch views, and you just respond to gamepad view and navigation view events. Obviously, that button does not exist on my keyboard anywhere, so that is something unique that you have to take advantage of if you want to put that within your app. But that's not all, because we also do have some other great things that I'm sure gamers are aware of. We have these bumpers, right? We have the triggers. These are things that you can take advantage of in your app because we map them to page left, page right, in any default control in the system. But if you're building a custom control, like, hey, I have my own media experience here that I really want to be able to slide left and right, and I want those bumpers to work, you can actually map that to page left, page up, page down, and we'll actually take care of that for you. The right stick in this case becomes pan. It's very similar because now I'm zoomed in, or I might be zoomed in on an experience. You might want to use the right stick to pan around, like in Edge, if I'm using a web view and I'm zoomed in on that web view, but now I need to be able to pan around. The left stick is changing my highlight or letting me select. The right stick will actually let me pan around within that page. X and Y, these are app appropriate shortcuts. You can do whatever you want to do within your app with these two buttons. I have mapped them within this particular app. The X shows the TV safe area, but you can put whatever you want there. We've seen a lot of apps that are getting submitted using Y as like a search function if they're media apps, but you can actually do whatever you want to do. We're looking for the community to really tell us, hey, what makes sense here? And then there are a bunch of buttons that are just totally unique to the remote. Play, pause, fast forward. Those are things that if you're doing media, you just get for free as long as you're using the built-in media controls. But you could also listen to those if you wanted to. If you had a specific reason that you're like, hey, it actually makes sense for someone to hit fast forward on this particular part of my UI and it's not a media element, you could still take advantage of those keys yourself if you really wanted to. So these are all the controls that are here. Take advantage of them. Really think about your UI. What makes sense here? And what would a user think of as they're roaming around my app, as they're playing with my app? What interesting things can I do with this to make it a unique first-class Xbox experience? So one of the things that making a great Xbox experience requires is for you to think about that focus. So in this case, I have the upper left, and I hit right, and we are automatically, as long as this is a system control again, not a control you developed yourself, it is going to look to the right and say, hey, what in the visual tree can I land on? And as long as it is a tab stop and it is visible, that's why we had that collapsed code where I was collapsing it, the visibility, said it would not be a tab stop when I didn't want it to be a tab stop. In this case, we're saying, hey, that's the one to the right, go. Same thing with down. I'm going to look down and say, this is the next thing in the visual tree, go for it. That's the one I want. Now when I hit right, it's still going to look to the right. Even though that one's a little further away, it will actually still end up as the next one. So if those were default rectangles or buttons or whatever, all this is going to work the way that you expect. Now, if I were on that top one and I hit right, what would you expect to happen? Well, we're still actually going to end up going right because it's in the visual tree to the right of you. Now, if you don't want that, if you say, hey, when I'm there, I really don't want someone to be able to go that side, you can either move it so that it doesn't show up in the view frustum there, or you can say, hey, maybe I do always want to force this, and you can say my XY focus right, which is what's the thing to the right of me. You can actually give it an explicit control. So maybe the user goes to the right side of the screen. You actually want them to go back to the left side of the screen for some reason. You can explicitly set that the XY focus right equals some control and make it go there yourself. So this was actually the code that we put in a minute ago about focus. This just outputs to your debug window and says, hey, what's the current control that got focus? What's the next one that got focus? So we do have a focus manager class that you can actually query and say, hey, who currently has focus? I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. And we'll give that back to you. So with that, let's switch back to the demo machine. So here, the one problem with this task list, to be honest with you, is that it doesn't look in your XAML. So if you actually have to-dos in your XAML code, it actually won't show them up here. But that's OK, because I just put the to-do at the top of the file. So if you look at the compare view here, we're actually going to go into the compare view. And we're basically going to scroll down here. And I just want to point out that is focused engagement enabled equals true. This is what I had to set here so that the individual presidents have focus, not the XY, or not the individual mouse cursor. Because I'm basically saying, hey, this is where I want everything to start at. And that is a key to a good experience. Pick a good starting point as well. And another thing is that we have a style XAML here. So this is 10-foot PC lets me on my desktop machine say, hey, I want to simulate running on a 10-foot PC without having to run on an Xbox. If you actually want to check if you are running on an Xbox, there's this analytics info, version info, device family, windows.xbox. So that means I'm currently running on an Xbox, but I may also want to be able to turn that on manually just because I want to be able to run entirely on my dev box. And so I have that set here as well. We do also have a styles that we edited for this. So I'm going to just run this again here locally so we can see what it looks like when I switch to a full screen, when I turn on is 10-foot mode in the app. So this is, again, we're running on the PC. And I'm just going to tab down here, and you'll see that this one right here, if I hover my mouse over it, says is 10-foot mode. You could actually do this in your own code. It's really easy. And now I'm just basically simulating what it would look like when I'm running on an Xbox. So this helps me in my dev environment. I can say, hey, I can pretend like I'm sitting on my couch, even though my PC is still 2 feet away from me. Or I could actually take my PC with Play Ready, with how you can actually stream your tablet off to your TV at home. You may actually want to have your desktop apps have this mode. You could actually turn that on yourself. So real easy to do, and it's a nice debugging thing as well. So let's switch back to slides. So a few more tips for getting a great XY focus. You'll notice there that we set the initial focus somewhere reasonable, like to George Washington. And this is something now all apps have this built in. Once you set XY focus, we will actually highlight the control for you. We put that white box around it. We do give you the ability to customize it, however. You also want to lay out your elements with a mind of how to focus. How's it going to move left, right, up, down? What is all that going to look like within my app? In this example here where we have this white box, there's a box right in the middle. Going left, right, up, down, it's not obvious to the user, how do I get here? How would I actually control this? So you need to think about that. You also should think about having a consistent size to everything that the user is going to select. In this right here, we have a skinny box, a tall box, a wide box. If we just have everything in the same plane so that it makes sense to go right, 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 left, 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 it's just a better user experience for the user. So that's just something for you to think about. Now, this can actually get a little tricky. We have what we call focus traps. So let's say this is my UI, and I have this button, and it's highlighted. And you can say, hey, that's where I currently am. And I hit right. Goes over to that slider. And you go, wait, but now I want to change the slider value. How do I do that? If I hit right, it goes to button 2. It doesn't actually change the slider value. What you actually need to do is go back to it and select it. Hit the A button. So now you actually have it engaged. And we call that focus engagement. So now that the control is engaged, now a left and right will actually control it moving left and right. And I hit B to back out, and now it's no longer captive. And now my left and right will continue working as they did before. You may have some controls where maybe you're letting someone choose from a list and you want to capture that to let them use the XY focus. But this is up to you. How do you want to use it? But all the built-in controls like the slider already do this for you by default, as long as you have XY focus mode on. But it's up to you. You can actually do this if you're building your own control. And mentioning focus again, this is what it used to look like before the current anniversary update on the Xbox. And you can see that upper left, you may not even be able to see it on the live stream. It is focused, but it had what we used to call marching ants. It was a bunch of little dots that kind of highlighted around a rectangle. And it was, okay, so this rectangle has these little things moving around. I can see that. But if I'm sitting 10 feet away, that becomes really, really hard for me to tell what's happening. So what we've done is we've actually just said, and I'm just pointing again, that's the one that's selected. Now we actually have that high visibility focus. So that one now has a nice white outline around it, and it will extend past the margins of your control. Doesn't shrink the control, just extends past the margins. And you can see here are everything that's selected, everything that I can select, but we have this nice bright rectangle around it. Configuring the high focus visibility visual here, you can actually choose to say, hey, you know what, I don't like the default white experience you guys are giving me. I set it, I said, hey, my focus visual kind is high visibility, But you can actually tune that. You can say, hey, I don't want it to be white here. I want it to be black. I can change the margin. I can change the primary brush, the thickness, the secondary brush, and the secondary thickness. This is entirely up to you on a per control basis, or you could do it at your app level. It's up to you which way you want to do that. We just really recommend, and the default styles in this app, I actually modified them so that we're using white so that you can see it on a dark background. So again, let's go back to the demo machine. And the first thing we're going to do here is actually just turn on dark mode. And so this is a theme, the element theme. This is part of the Xbox. The PC uses light by default, but we want to use dark on an Xbox. And you can see here I'm basically saying, am I in the is 10-foot PC mode? And earlier we saw that was, am I running on Xbox or did the user choose it? So now if I actually run this on my local desktop again, we'll have a dark background. The other thing that I want to do is I want to turn on sounds. Because on an Xbox, you couldn't hear it, but when I hit left, right, nothing was happening. There was no sound there. Users expect that, even from the dashboard experience in Xbox, that going left and right gives you that little doot, 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 little noise as you navigate around. So another thing that we need to do here is, hey, if I'm on a 10-foot PC, basically am I running on an Xbox, or did I say I want to be running like I'm on a TV? We have these TV safe colors. And this is actually a dictionary. You can use it in your own apps if you want. Well, it's not showing there. But it's just a XAML file that actually has all of the colors toned down. And we're going to talk about that at the very end of this talk. And then there's a design talk later. But basically, you don't want to use black. You end up using something a little larger. And you don't want to use white. Because those really high-end colors like 255, 255, 255 will cause bleed on some television. So we have what we call TV-safe colors. And in this case, I just put them out into a separate XAML dictionary, and I import them here. And then we turn on the sounds. So, and this is actually a to-do I forgot to put a number on. But this is actually the Gamepad X, where I'm checking for Gamepad X. And I'm just going to toggle that bounds. Now I'm going to run here first on my local machine real quick, just so you can see what this looks like when I turn on 10-foot PC mode. So now you can see, hey, look, this doesn't look any different, right? This is still white because I didn't say, hey, I want to run like I'm running an Xbox. As soon as I turn on that 10-foot mode, oh, now everything changed. I have a black background. I can now see my, if I hit tab, all these tab stops working. See the highlight working. I can use the left and right arrow to navigate around. I can still use my mouse, but I actually have what the UI will probably end up looking like on the Xbox. So now let's just go ahead and deploy that over the Xbox. Change this to my remote machine, hit play, and now it's going to deploy to the Xbox. And on the Xbox, it's actually pretty amazing if you use the desktop app that you can actually do most of your development without needing a second monitor or a dedicated TV. But we still recommend you have it just for that color safe mode. You may have a television that doesn't display pure white. It actually displays like a really light gray. And so you want to think about that when you're building your apps. And so now here's the app. And I'm already in 10-foot mode. Notice, see, if I go down and I select 10-foot mode, that's not going to work because I'm already there. I'm already on 10-foot mode here. So now we can select individuals. I can still go back and forth. Okay, let's go back to slides. So colors. This is what we're talking about with the TV safe colors. When you go with the default system theme, a PC is always light. A white background. It's been that way for years and years and years. But an Xbox is dark. A lot of people are using their Xbox in their living room where a white giant screen would put out a lot of light at you, and you don't want that. If you look at our own first-party apps on the Xbox, we always use a dark theme when we're on the Xbox. This is actually an illustration of what we're talking about when we say we want to clamp down those colors. And there are 3 different ways that you can do it. You can actually take the originals here, you can do clamping, or you can do scaling. We recommend clamping, but it really is up to you. What do you want to do? And we have the design session later on this afternoon where you can get a little bit more information about that. Sounds, this is actually really important to a lot of users. Being able to understand the interaction, being able to see it move is one thing, but hear the little, hey, I clicked it, maybe your screen takes half a second to load. If the user hears the little, hey, they clicked on this, they're going to know that it happened, and they'll be more patient. And if they click and nothing, they don't hear anything, they get no feedback, they're going to click, 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 click over and over and over again. Platform controls make sounds by default on Xbox, but if you're building your own custom control, you can hook up these controls yourself. And if we have sound on the slides machine, and I'm not sure we do, but you would actually be able to hear these, and this deck will also be published so you can listen to them. But you can actually use these in your own custom controls. You can say, hey, when the user selects something, when they invoke something, when they go back, when they show, when they hide, when they move next, when they move previous, all these sounds are available to you even on a PC because it's Windows 10. So let's do a quick demo. And now, let me switch here to my local machine. Actually, I'm not sure we have sound on this machine either. Yeah, let me turn the sound up. And let's just deploy here to the local machine. We should be able to hear as my controller is working. Can you hear that? It's pretty quiet. Those are the Xbox sounds playing in your PC app. So you actually have that ability to do it whenever you want. You could do it on your PC. Some users may like it, some users may not. I wouldn't turn it on by default in my app because then it looks like you're an Xbox app running on desktop, which may be a little weird to some users. But you can do that if you want to. And now if I switch back to non-PC mode and you see I start selecting, no more sounds. I only do that when I'm in 10-foot mode. So you may want to do something like that within your own app. Just wherever it makes sense within your application. Now let's go back to slides. So what we talked about today, and this is all about XAML apps. We talked about UWP on the Xbox and how you really want to have a good 10-foot experience. You want to think about what does your UI look like when I'm further away from it? How's the user going to interact with it? What's my gamepad remote look like? How am I going to actually let them interact with it? What am I going to do to tune the focus? How am I going to take that visualization for focus? Do I just want the plain white rectangle? Is that good enough for me? Or do I need something else? You may also want to play around with your inputs and your behaviors if you need a captive. If you need to captive and let the user slide left and right, that's something that you can totally do. But when you're presenting on the TV, you also want to make sure you take advantage of TV safe area. You can add sounds, take advantage of colors, and always look at your UI sizing because it is going to be different. And so that's what the app will look like when you're running it on your Xbox. And that's it. Thank you guys very much for attending today. And this source code will be published on GitHub in just the next few minutes. And we have a few questions up here. The first one is, will the controller automatically work with your application, or do you have to program in custom controls for your app? It will work automatically. You don't have to do anything special. Every default control in the UWP platform understands the controller now. So as long as you're targeting the anniversary update, if you're just targeting UWP and the user's running on, let's say, Windows 10, the initial build, it won't work there. But on the anniversary update, it will. Can Xbox UWP apps use the Kinect just as a regular Windows 10? I actually do not know the answer to that. We will get back to you on that one. Which version of Windows 10 runs in Xbox? It's actually Windows 10 Anniversary Update. It's the build that just got published out to everyone recently. As long as you're on getting all your updates from Windows Update, which you should, it's actually the same version that's running on your dev machine now, as long as you have all your current updates. Can we have a download link for the Xbox One Dev Mode Companion? Yes, we will tweet that out. I actually tweeted it a little while ago. If you look at mine, it's currently in preview in the store, or it's flagged as a preview, but it is available to everyone. It's not gated or anything like that. You can download it. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I think we are set. Thanks, everyone, and we'll be on Twitter after this. I'm at Infinite Codex. Please tweet out your questions, and we'll get back to you. Thanks.